we have been down this road before, but there is some brand new controversy and headlines floating around criticizing Nintendo for how they price their games, specifically in the Nintendo Switch generation, because we did just learn the official price point of Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, which is their January 2025 release. And wouldn't you know it, it's a full price 60, but we are also talking about this on the day that Luigi's Mansion 2 HD is launching at 60. And if you go back and look what those games were sold for on the original systems that they were released on, well, it was quite a bit lower than 60 in each case. And if you want the long and short answer of how Nintendo prices their games according to their own words from numerous investors meetings over the course of time, as well as just some PR heads being interviewed and asked about it, it is determined on a quote-unquote case-by-case basis, and that is a nice PR way of saying we get what we think we can out of these games from a revenue perspective, because we have to go all the way back first to Tears of the Kingdom when it launched in May of 2023, because that was the first Nintendo Switch release that was sold from a first-party perspective at a $70 retail price. At least that's what it was here in the US, $69.99, the exact MSRP. And you might remember back then, people boycotting the game online, saying Nintendo was charging $70 for essentially Breath of the Wild DLC, and they were not happy with it. Funnily enough, all those complaints shut up pretty quickly online whenever they saw how much content was in the game and how it wasn't just DLC for Breath of the Wild, but clearly a lot more than that. Just a sequel to Breath of the Wild, so yes, it was set in the same Hyrule, but Nintendo delivered on the value, in my opinion, in Tears of the Kingdom. I haven't even finished everything you can do in the game, and I have clocked in well over 80, 90 hours, and I could keep going if I wanted to, but just haven't gotten around to going back into the world of Hyrule of Tears of the Kingdom once again. But that was definitely a hot button issue when we learned about the price point, because we're expecting Nintendo to likely go to $70 for their major first-party releases for the upcoming generation, but to do it mid-generation when you don't have a new console launching, it felt like a weird one-off step, but we did not see them go to that for every following first-party mainline release past that, because Super Mario Bros. Wonder, arguably their big holiday 2023 game, was just sold at a $60 MSRP, like many other titles that we've seen released since then. But then you have a case like Metroid Prime Remastered, and this was kind of a pleasant surprise, because not only did we get this game announced at the February 2023 Nintendo Direct as a shadow drop that you could download later that day or pick up the physical version for later on, but Nintendo revealed that it was just a mere $40 for one of their highest rated, critically acclaimed games in history. And even at that $40 price point, it didn't sell that well. I think we're well over 1 million copies now, but it really fell off a cliff after that, and it hasn't continued to sell. I will be curious to see if that changes as we get into more of the Metroid Prime 4 Beyond conversation and some of the marketing ramp up for that game. But nonetheless, that to me, 30, 40 hours of gameplay at a $40 price point with a flawless remaster, by the way, excellent lighting, excellent textures, like literally a great game through and through, in my opinion, and a great quality remaster with a lot of extra work added in to make it look better, play better, and even have modern quality of life improvements. It still was at a $40 price point, and that's where we see Nintendo go the other way and actually give us a little bit more value than maybe what people think it should be sold at. Then you have some more recent examples like Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, which does drop today at a $60 retail. And of course, this game was a 3DS game, and from what I can tell, even the reviews online, new content is not included in this, and it's very much an HD upres of its original 3DS counterpart with some extra work done to the textures. It's not just a mere port with no extra remaster work put in there. It absolutely does look cleaner, and there's a lot of little enhancements that were changed, but this was of course originally a $39.99 game on the 3DS, and it is now being sold for $59.99, so a full $20 jump. And really, the value that you're getting out of that additional $20 is just the ability to be able to play it on a TV and it looking a lot more premium in terms of, you know, the resolution it can go up to and the texture quality and things like that. But largely, this is the same game repackaged in a Nintendo Switch box for $20 more than the original MSRP. And now that brings us to the game that we just learned the price point around that will be out January, which is Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. And I'm going to say right out of the gate, I'm excited Nintendo is porting this game. It's one that I didn't want to go hook up my Wii to play or even mess with emulation to play, but when it drops in January on the Nintendo Switch release calendar, I will be picking up this game even at a $60 price point. However, I'm very well aware about the complaints around that price point because Similar to Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, if you look at the trailer that we saw at the most recent Nintendo Direct for Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, well, it's largely the same game as well. Of course, you are going to get some 3DS levels that were not in the original Wii release, and it's all going to be together and playable in one version of the game. So that's new content, but in terms of the quality of life stuff, it's going to play the same. It looks cleaned up in the texture department as well, but it's not a real reworking of the game, not even as much work on either one of Luigi's Mansion 2 HD or Donkey Kong Country Returns HD as Metroid Prime Remastered. Like, you can clearly see more work from a visual standpoint and a gameplay standpoint went into Metroid Prime Remastered than either one of these two titles, yet we have Nintendo pricing these ones at $60 and Metroid Prime at $40. And why is that? Well, as I said at the beginning of this video, the long and short of it is Nintendo charges what they believe they can make off these games based on the franchise. And they just happen to know that the family household names that are tied to Nintendo that the casual gamers as well as the core gamers will likely go pick up is your Marios, your Donkey Kongs, your Legend of Zelda, your Animal Crossing, even Splatoon nowadays, Smash Bros, your big breakout franchises that do consistently in the 10, 20, and even 30 million range in some of these franchises or more in the Nintendo Switch's life cycle. These are the names and these are the franchises that get that $60 retail treatment, even if it's just a simple HD up-res with some texture reworking compared to a game that got a lot of development time like Metroid Prime Remastered. But the name Metroid historically has never been one to top the charts from a sales perspective, and Nintendo knew they were going to have a hard time selling that game to begin with to the Switch audience, so they felt like a $40 price point might help justify some additional units being moved out there. And maybe it does come down to some of this aura that Nintendo creates around their games where people actually think just on surface value, not talking about people who really deep dive these games and watch videos like this and keep up with Nintendo news channels, but your average consumer walking into a store might see a $40 game that's a brand new Nintendo Switch release, or even in the eShop see a $40 price point on a Nintendo Switch release and not know what the game is, but assume that it is more on the indie level or something that's not up to the quality of a major first-party Nintendo game. And I do think that's some of what we are seeing go on here with the lack of sales. Maybe for something like a Metroid Prime Remastered, you probably had to know about how good that game is and how worth the $40 it is in order to not think it's maybe one of these hidden gem titles if you didn't grow up with it, and maybe it's worth it, maybe it's not, maybe it's only for the core Metroid fans. That's kind of a debate for a different day, but with how Nintendo has priced their games in the Nintendo Switch generation, they largely launch at $60 for most first-party releases, occasionally a $50, every now and then a $30 like everybody wanted to Switch, but for the most part, we see them stick to that price point for the remainder of the generation. We get the occasional big seasonal sales like around the holiday season, the summertime, and one or two during the spring or fall, but we rarely see first-party Nintendo Switch games discounted, and we haven't gotten Nintendo Selects or anything like they used to do in prior generations, even at the 7.5 year point in the Nintendo Switch pretty much that we find ourselves in today. We're not quite 7.5 years, but we're getting there quick, and all of these original launch games like Breath of the Wild or Mario Odyssey that came out in the launch year, Smash Bros, all these games that came out towards the beginning of the Nintendo Switch are still being sold for a full $60 retail on any given day that you walk into a store to purchase them or that you purchase them from the eShop. So trust me when I say I get the complaints around Nintendo pricing online. I would just like to point out that maybe you can argue that they're getting worse in the Switch generation than they have in the past, but the reality is largely as long as the consumers are willing to pay the price, and maybe they even associate that $60 price point with a little bit more quality because Nintendo has conditioned their fans to believe that, if they're getting good enough return on investment from pricing it at that, maybe you sell a few less because it's priced at $60, but you make more revenue because the people who did buy it paid the full $60, they're going to continue to do that. And that's why at the end of the day, the only thing you can do that's meaningful to weigh in on this topic, not go around online and tell other people not to buy it, but vote with your own wallet. Because as I mentioned, and you can come at me in the comments, I'm part of the problem on this, I actually value having Donkey Kong Country HD in my collection on the Nintendo Switch. Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, on the other hand, I considered picking up that game. I'm probably going to wait for a sale on it. It's just one that I didn't play through on the 3DS, so I could kind of justify the $60 price point, and I probably do need to pick it up at some point in time. But right now, with Elden Ring DLC being out, and that's kind of currently what I'm going through from a gaming perspective, I really do not have the time to boot up a brand new Luigi's Mansion game at this time. So if there's a lull in my gaming schedule, I'll go back to it. But that particular one, just because of it being a more simple port, it was originally priced at $40, and it definitely seems like it's lighter on the content side than the other Luigi's Mansion games. I'm going to hold off on it, but I am going to be pre-ordering Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. So you have to vote with your wallet at the end of the day. Only you can control your spending habits and what you actually put your money towards. And if Nintendo sees enough fans not picking up these Wii and 3DS era ports that were $50 and $40 at a $60 price point, maybe they will shift their strategy with this in the future. But again, I promise you, this is very much largely tied to the franchises and how Nintendo thinks these franchises will perform. And you can bet your bottom dollar that anything Mario, anything Zelda, anything Donkey Kong even, will likely be at that $60 plus price point every single time moving forward. And we're probably going to $70 for each mainline release, at least all the big first-party Nintendo games for their next-gen console. So that's my 2 cents on the matter. I want to know where you guys fall on the issue. What do you think about the new pricing controversy once again popping up as Nintendo has revealed the official $60 price point for Donkey Kong Country Returns HD? And are you somebody who will be adding that game into your collection, or Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, which is out today as of the time of filming this video? Or are you going to pass up all of these games while they're 60, and you think Nintendo really does need to reassess their pricing strategy for the more simple HD versions of their previous games? So thanks so much for watching the video today, everyone. Make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.